Good morning, everybody. It is Fiona from Early Retirement in Australia, and this is all about my journey documented through YouTube on how I intend to retire early in my 50s in Australia. And this morning, I'm coming to you from with my partner, my 32-foot bay cruiser, which we have on the Brisbane River. So Friday and Saturday evenings, I stay on this bay cruiser. During the week, at the moment, I stay at the house. So I think this morning I wanted to speak to the accommodation part of retiring in my 50s. So I rented until I was 38, and at that point I purchased a villa unit in Melbourne, and I managed to purchase one in a very good spot in Melbourne, in a place called Ascot Vale, home of COVID-19 for a while in Melbourne. But anyway, when I think I was about 40, I just got a bit over things and decided to move. So I moved from Melbourne to Katherine, where I had a job. So I started renting, and I was renting there, and that's where Kevin and I met. And then after 11 months, the job fell through, so I had to find another job, and I found another job in Darwin. Now, this is where life actually got quite interesting, because moving to Darwin, paid rent for a couple of weeks, and then it was like, oh, there must be another way around paying rent. So I did a bit of Googling and found house sitting. And for the next 15 months in Darwin, we house sat, and I know for, I think it was 2017 or something like that, I paid $1,600 in accommodation costs. So that was hotels and campsites and everything. And yes, I was working for the whole time that I was doing this. So in Darwin, we house sat in, got a house set on Magnetic Island, so we house sat there for 7 weeks. And then when we arrived in Brisbane, did a bit of house sitting in Brisbane, but Kevin bought a very small sailboat. So we have another YouTube channel called Living Our Lifestyle, and if you look that up, we had Clipper, which Kevin turned into an electric sailboat, which he's very well known for. So we lived on a small sailboat for 3.5 years, and it was quite small, everybody. Not big and glamorous, quite small. And then after that, I house sat for another year. And during that year, I sold my property in Melbourne, and I bought a property in Bulimba. And luckily, no one else turned up for auction. So basically, I have rented. I've always tried to rent for as lower price is as reasonable. And I've house sat, and I've lived on a boat. So once again, my motto is live out of the 4 square walls, which is what I like to do. I like to push the borders, and I think if you do want to retire early, as I do, you really have to push those limits, find ways to live outside of them. And I think accommodation is one of those things that you can control to some extent. There are some things that you can't control, but I think that accommodation and transport are always, I think, the two most costly parts of life that I think to some extent can be controlled. And largely through house sitting, and if you're able to do something like live on a boat, live on a boat. It's definitely worked for me. Rented the house out. Didn't pay much for rent, lived in a great location here in Brisbane, being on the river, and it meant that I could get my house paid off in 9 years. So there are other ways to accommodate other than paying for normal rent. So it's one of those big things, I think, that has a huge impact on financial independence. So I'm going to call it a morning there. We've got some other exciting stuff happening today, but I thought I'd just leave you with that. Think outside of the box, and how can you change your accommodation costs to save you a load of money. So from Fiona, retiring early in my 50s, I will see you tomorrow. Bye bye. Remember to subscribe.